After my husband's funeral, my sister stood up in front of everyone, held up a piece of paper, and screamed, "This is the will, and my son is actually his child." My heart stopped. The room went silent, and every single eye turned toward me as if I had just been stabbed twice, once by my husband's betrayal and once by my own blood. Abigail, the faithful wife, suddenly looked like the outsider at her own husband's funeral. My sister smirked, clutching her son's hand as if she had won some twisted game. Before I continue, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and share this story, because trust me, what happened next will shock you even more. I couldn't breathe. My husband, the man I had built a life with, was gone. And now, instead of mourning, my sister was using this moment to destroy me. She waved the will in the air, declaring that everything my husband owned, our house, our savings, even his company shares, was meant for her child. Gasps filled the room. My relatives whispered, my in-laws glared at me, and I could feel the walls closing in. It felt like I had lost my marriage, my future, and my dignity in the same moment. But here's the thing nobody knew: I wasn't as powerless as they thought. I had been quiet for years, overlooked, underestimated, mocked for living off my husband. What they didn't know was that I had been working on something in silence, something that could change everything. And the moment my sister smirked at me, whispering, "You have nothing left now, Abigail," I knew this was the beginning of my revenge. The lawyer cleared his throat, ready to read the will out loud, but my sister snatched it from his hand. As if she was the rightful owner of everything. "My son is his real blood. Abigail has nothing now," she announced with pride, her voice sharp enough to cut through my chest. People gasped, some even nodded, believing her instantly. It was like the entire room had turned into a courtroom where I was already declared guilty. I sat frozen in my chair, holding back tears, but inside me, a storm was rising. For years, I had been underestimated, laughed at for not being as successful as the rest of my family. My sister had always been the star, always stealing attention, always painting me as the weak one. Now she was using my husband's betrayal to bury me completely. My in-laws glared at me with disgust, whispering, "She wasted his life," while my cousins muttered, "She was never enough for him." But if only they knew what I had built in silence. While they mocked me, I had been grinding every night, running something they didn't even know existed. A company registered under a different name, investments carefully hidden, and power that could shake their arrogant faces when revealed. My sister leaned closer, her smile venomous, and whispered just loud enough for others to hear, "You should start packing, Abigail. The house isn't yours anymore." Laughter rippled through the crowd, stabbing me again and again. But I didn't flinch. Instead, I looked her straight in the eyes, calm and steady, and said, "Are you sure about that?" The smirk on her face faded for the first time. She had no idea the trap she was walking into, and I was about to flip the entire funeral into a battlefield she could never win. The lawyer finally took control and unfolded the will in his trembling hands. Everyone leaned in, waiting for the final nail in my coffin. My sister gripped her son's shoulders proudly, already celebrating victory in her head. "Go ahead," she taunted, "read it so everyone knows Abigail is nothing without him." The lawyer's voice echoed through the room, "I, Daniel, leave behind my assets, properties, and savings." He paused, adjusting his glasses, "to my legal spouse, Abigail." The room exploded in shock. Gasps, whispers, and angry murmurs filled the air. My sister's jaw dropped as if someone had slapped her across the face. "That's not possible," she shrieked, shaking the second paper in her hand. "This is the real will. He promised everything to my son." But the lawyer didn't even glance at her forged document. "This is the only legally registered will," he stated firmly. The crowd turned, eyes wide with disbelief. My sister's smug expression crumbled into panic. She had been so sure, so arrogant, but now she looked like a thief caught red-handed. She tried to protest, yelling about her child being his blood, but even that backfired. Relatives began whispering ugly things about her. "She ruined her own sister's life, she's shameless, she's been hiding this affair all along." I stayed quiet, letting her drown in the mess she created. But deep inside, I knew this was only the beginning. Because what no one knew, not even the lawyer, was that I had far more power than just this inheritance. I had an empire she couldn't touch, one that would soon crush her pride completely. I leaned closer to her and whispered so only she could hear, "You tried to steal my future. But you have no idea what's coming next." Her face went pale. And that's when I decided, it was time to reveal my real trump card. My sister's voice cracked as she screamed, "He told me this house was mine. He promised everything to my son." But nobody believed her anymore. My in-laws glared at her in disgust, my cousins whispered like bees buzzing around a fire, and even her own friends stepped back, embarrassed to be standing near her. The lawyer shut the file with a firm snap, sealing her defeat in front of everyone. I stood up slowly. The room went silent, waiting for me to break down, to collapse in tears. But instead, I smiled. "You all think my husband was the reason I survived," I said, my voice calm but sharp. "You think without him, I have nothing. But let me tell you something, while you mocked me, while you called me useless, I was building something you could never imagine." Every head turned toward me. My sister frowned, shaking her head as if trying to brush off my words. "She's bluffing," she hissed. But I wasn't. I pulled out my phone, tapped a few times, and the giant TV screen in the living room lit up. Documents, logos, and figures appeared one after another: company registrations, investment portfolios, stock ownerships. Gasps filled the air again. My cousin muttered, "Wait, she owns this?" Someone else whispered, "These companies are worth millions." Faces that had mocked me minutes earlier now looked at me with shock and fear. I turned to my sister, whose face had drained of all color. "You tried to destroy me with a forged will," I said coldly. "But the truth is, I don't need my husband's money. I've been running a business bigger than anything you've ever touched. And while you were busy betraying me, I was building an empire." The silence was heavy. My sister's lips trembled. She wanted to fight back, but she had no weapons left. Still, I wasn't done. "This house, this family, this name, you tried to take it all from me. But tomorrow morning, when the news breaks, the world will know who really owns everything in this room." And that's when I saw it, the fear in her eyes. She realized she wasn't just losing today. She was about to lose everything forever. My sister staggered back, her face pale, her hands shaking as whispers filled the room. Everyone was staring at her now, not with sympathy, but with disgust. For years, she had painted me as weak, the useless wife living in the shadow of my husband. But in one single moment, that image was shattered. I walked toward the center of the room, my heels echoing against the floor, every step heavy with power. "You see," I said, my voice steady but sharp, "while you were busy gossiping, while you laughed at me for being just a wife, I was building. I was investing in tech, real estate, and startups. I worked in silence, because I knew one day, this day would come." The TV screen behind me flashed with news headlines I had saved, articles about companies I secretly owned shares in, businesses valued in the millions. Everyone gasped louder as a video clip played of me shaking hands with CEOs at a conference, my face once invisible to them now larger than life. My sister screamed, "You're lying. This is fake," but her voice cracked with fear. No one believed her anymore. My aunt, who had always favored her, shook her head in shame. "How could you betray your own blood like this?" she muttered. My in-laws, who moments ago had glared at me with hatred, now looked at me with a mix of shock and respect. Even her so-called friends turned their backs, whispering things like, "She's finished." I turned to her, my eyes locked on hers. "You tried to humiliate me at my husband's funeral, the lowest moment of my life. You thought you could bury me. But you forgot one thing: underdogs always rise. And when we do, we rise higher than you can ever reach." Her son, confused and scared, tugged at her arm, whispering, "Mom, let's go," but she couldn't move. She was frozen, caught in the trap of her own greed. Then, I dropped the final bomb. "Oh, and by the way," I said, pulling out a folder from my bag, "I already bought this house last year. Legally, in my name. So when you told me to pack my bags," I paused, smirking as gasps filled the room. "It's you who should start packing." The room erupted. Relatives who once mocked me now clapped. Some smiled with tears in their eyes, finally seeing the truth. My sister's face turned red, then pale, then empty. She had nothing left, no money, no dignity, no power. I stepped closer, lowered my voice so only she could hear, and whispered, "You tried to break me. But all you did was make me unstoppable." As she stormed out of the house with her son, heads hung low, I felt a strange calm wash over me. For the first time in years, I wasn't the weak one. I wasn't the shadow. I was Abigail, the woman they underestimated, the woman they mocked, the woman they tried to erase, and now, I was the woman who owned everything. That night, as I closed the door behind me, I realized something: revenge doesn't always come with fire and shouting. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is silence, followed by the sound of your enemies crumbling under the weight of your success, because in the end, they had called me nothing, but now, I was everything.